Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I want to thank the organizer for inviting me to this conference. So I'm going to talk about Islamic finance, something different than everybody else, so for your heart. In order to keep my chain of thought intact, I'm going to pretty much follow my slides. So can you see my slides? So we talked about the golden age of Muslims yesterday and today, this morning. We do have a very rich history. We have the canon of medicine of Abyssinia. We have Abul Sunas. Yesterday, the professor from England talked about the history of medicine that has been popularized, and many people followed that. We have created many institutions during the golden age of Islam, Baitul Hikmah, Damascus during the Umayyad era, Darul Hikmah, Baghdad during Abbasid era, Nizamiya Madrasa, several cities during Seljuk, Knowledge Center in Cordoba and Andalus, libraries which more books than the rest of the Europe at that time. Then what happened? Then the dark ages of the Europe went away. They started imitating us. They have collected our knowledge. They came to our knowledge centers. And the sun rises from the east, the golden age of Islam. Sunset in the east, the sun rises in the west. The discovery of Muslim Spain, Al-Andalus, Oxford and Cambridge came way after many of the universities created in the Muslim world. The Enlightenment started in the West, Industrial Revolution, the Western dominance. They started colonizing our countries. They started destroying our institutions, zakat, waqf, and so on. So now, in the last 50 or 60 years, those who work in the fiqh muamalat or Islamic commercial jurisprudence, they said that we want to live our life, financial life, Islamic way. But again, so many questions came out. So what ethics had to do with finance? How can we expand our business without taking loans? Interest has become part and parcel of global financial system. It is impossible to have two systems of banking. It is the same thing, only in the name differ, interest to profit. There is no difference. Many people ask this question. If you forsake dealing with interest, we will be left out of the business with the Western world. Suitable in the golden age, but not in this fiercely competitive modern times. Only be applicable in Islamic countries. It is just a dream, never can be reality. But that industry, if we take, journey a few years back, 2008 and 9, it was roughly $1 trillion industry, 802 trillion. Then came COVID, 2019 and 20, it increased by 150%. And our dream by 2030, that is going to reach the $20 trillion mark. The current Islamic finance industry is about 4 trillion. It's less than 1% of the global financial system. And out of the Islamic finance spectrum, Islamic banking dominates about 70%. You have Takaful, you have other financial institutions where Waqf falls in. I'm going to talk about Waqf specifically today. We have the Sukuk, is a sort of Islamic bond market, and Islamic mutual fund. So the global awareness is very limited. It is only towards the Muslim only, Islamic finance. But our goal is to increase the pie. It's not only for Muslim, not only for Islamic banking. It covers all Islamic financial ecosystem. And this is for Rahmatul lil Alamin, it's for the entire mankind. Now, having said this, we go through a lot of criticism for the Islamic finance industry, specifically Islamic banking. If you look at Islamic banking, it's right now 80% murabaha banking, cost plus banking, which is very similar to conventional banking operation. And the 20% are partnership type of financing like mudaraba and musharaka. Our goal is to flip it, make it 80% mudaraba, musharaka, and 20%. And for this, we need istihad, we need knowledge, we need training. Ultimately, we want to rebrand Islamic finance. It must be rebranded as beneficial to people of all faiths. and belief, and not confined to the Muslims only. I study Islamic finance history. In every religion, there is a verse, there's a saying against riba or interest rate in different formats. But in Islam, it has been codified. It has been made haram. Even ayah says that Allah has declared war against the people who take riba or dealing with riba. Now that brings the question of what is riba. We have an idea. So there are two types of riba, and you know, those who study that riba, the admonition of riba came into stages. First said that it is not good. That final verse, it has been made haram. So we have two types of riba. One is called riba al-nasiya. That is, we see the Quranic riba. That means in financing transaction, if I give you $100 today, tomorrow you could return back me $100 only. There could be inflation, anything else, the time value of money, everything you ignore. So equal with equal, you cannot ask for more, no extra allowed. There's another type of riba that we talk about called riba al-fadl. When you exchange like gold for gold, it has to be equal amount on the spot. There is a reason why there are one comes from riba al-nasiya from the Quran, and riba al-fadl comes from the hadith. So it is a property. Usually riba al-fadl, it is a luxurious property which are used by the rich people. Riba or loan riba is a time dependent because you need to buy dates right now, you have to survive, very much time dependent. From the demand perspective, it is used by the rich people, and the loan riba is used by the needy. Elasticity, from the economic perspective, highly elastic. I mean, if a piece of bread, even the price goes up, you need to buy it. So if you look at the inflation figure that just came out recently, you know, the interest rate is now 22-year high, 5.5%. 22 years ago, it was also 5.5% because at that time, there was inflation in this country. At that time, our national debt was $6 trillion. Right now, the national debt is about $33 trillion. In 22 years ago, the interest payment was about $400 billion. Now the interest payment is about $1.8 trillion. In terms of the federal budget in the United States, 10% of the federal budget goes towards paying of interest. So if you keep paying more and more interest, you have less and less money for social development and other government activities. The figure is even worse for UK. UK, the 25% of the national budget goes towards paying interest expense. So interest has been admonished. When a person has a cancer, we can see, but this interest is a cancer killing the society, getting atrocious tension, and it is killing us day by day. It affects fertility, it affects your mental health, it affects your way of living, it creates inequality in the system. I'm not going to get into this thing, but there has been tons of studies from the economic analysis, from the Sharia analysis, from the practical experience that has been shown. So now, from the Islamic perspective, when you have money has three purposes. You can give the money to a loan, and what is the purpose of giving a loan? To help. In Islam, lending is always a charitable act, Qardul Hassan. In that case, the person who is giving the loan can ask for guarantee, but no extra. Or you can give the money to someone else to saving purpose. In saving purpose, the person has to guarantee that I keep your money safe. The person cannot give you an extra. The person who is saving the money for you have to pay the person to keep your money. It's not giving the money extra. The third one is invest. So I want to do a business with you, and we come to a contract. If there is a profit, we share. If there is a loss, we share. But nobody can guarantee each other. The reason I'm saying the three different uses of money to come to the definition that I always remember. There's a lot of debate from the Sharia perspective, from practical perspective. What is riba? Any financial contract that you take, you are reasonably smart enough, you ask this question, whether this contract has extra and guarantee together. If it is the same contract, it is called riba. You must stay away from it. Now, I know in this country, because you are living not in Muslim country, you're a minority, the Islamic financial system is very nascent. There is Saturna Islamic Mutual Fund, there are a few banks, but if you look at very carefully, it is very difficult to really create an Islamic banking in this country. But we are trying. I'm sure the younger generation will come up with modus operandi and so on. But today, I want to focus a little bit on Waqf. In Islamic financial system or economic system, you do have Islamic finance. Of course, you have Islamic economy, macro, micro, and so on. Within the Islamic finance, you have the Islamic commercial finance and Islamic social finance. So what is Islamic social finance? Islamic social finance is a branch of Islamic finance that offers products and services not for profit. It has also been dubbed as a social safety net. The objective of Islamic social finance is to achieve social justice by a redistribution of wealth. From the maqasid of Sharia, it is mandatory that one to help each other. So the social finance is an approach to manage investment that generate financial returns while including measurable policy. So it is not philanthropy, it's not sadaqah. You are into engage in a business, social business, you want to have a positive return, but keeping or managing or achieving certain social objectives. So Islamic commercial finance, that is banking or a stock market that invest, is inadequate to fulfill all segments of population. The Sharia contracts used and their objectives are different when it is used for not-for-profit purposes. So we really need to develop the Islamic social finance sector, which is very much neglected from the research-wise and from the practice-wise. If you want to remove inequality in a system, if you want to have a happy life, happy ummah, you really need to focus more on the Islamic social finance aspect. The question is, what are the tools of Islamic social finance? You have the zakat, which is the third pillar of Islam, mandatory. You have the sadaqah, you have the waqf, I'm going to spend a little time on it. Takaful, which is Islamic insurance. You have Qardul Hassan, which has been said, godly loan. You know, you give loan, and if you do not somebody return, you get the reward in the day after. You have the Islamic microfinance. Bangladesh is a popular pioneering country, popularizing this idea. You have the sukuk, or Islamic financial instruments. Now, if you go into deeper, the poverty is there has been a lot of saying in the Sharia that Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet, that poverty is something very greatly evil in a society. So in order to attack poverty, you cannot do it only through the sadaqah or charity. There has to be a concerted, comprehensive approach. And what are those comprehensive approach? First one, any government or country have some positive measure. What are those? It could be income growth. You must run the country so the country grows. There are functional distribution of income. There are equal opportunity for everyone. So once that part is done, you go to the second part. You must have some rules and regulations and guidelines, preventive measures. You make sure that all the wealth are not concentrated into few hands. Unfortunately, if you take any Muslim country or the 57 OIC countries, you'll find the top 10% probably owns and controls 90% of the wealth. That is not Islamic. And there is a rampant corruption. So these are the preventive measures that has to be done. So you do positive measure, then you do preventive measure. Still, there is a corrective measure that has to be needed. And that's where Islamic social finance come into play. Compulsory transfer, like zakat, is mandatory. The recommended transfer, the charity and waqf, and the state responsibility. So there are differences, similarities of zakat and waqf. So I want to focus waqf, but a specific type of waqf today is called cash waqf. So what is a waqf? It's a voluntary. It is a rate, any amount somebody can, in this country, a similar concept would be foundation. Now, expense categories, a person who creates a foundation, he can say what is the objective of this foundation. Let's say House of Wisdom starts with the waqf today. So that objective will be written in the waqf deed. Whoever gives money, that money, the return on this money, because capital has to remain intact, will be distributed on the stated objective that's waqf. So these are some of the differences and similarities of the zakat, lillah and waqf. Lillah means it's a short term, but waqf is a long term perpetuity. Now, there is a saying, the Islamic role of philanthropy in economy, the Islamic view, we believe carrying out charitable work fulfills the maqasid of Sharia. You know, there is a Muslim hadith, when a man dies or woman dies, all his acts come to an end, but three: recurring charity, like Waqf, knowledge, useful knowledge that helps benefits the society. Yesterday, brother was talking about a procedure of bulb correction, or as a pious offspring who pays for him. The Waqf structure provides an avenue to obtain the favor of Allah by fulfilling these three aspirations simultaneously. And that also helps your macroeconomy as well. In the Quran, financial giving for charity, infaq, and financial giving of charity increases the consumption from the classical economic doctrine. If you increase donations, whether it's a sadaqah or it's a waqf or qardul Hassan, the aggregate expenditure increases, and that impacts your national income. National income increases. So it has a macroeconomic impact. There are two ways this Islamic non-profit sector can increase a GDP or national income of any country. You can invest in profit and loss sharing commercial ventures to lift the capital levels and therefore raise GDP. You can also have the non-profit sector will result in healthier and more educated and productive labor force. So non-for-profit, House of Wisdom would be an example. Not-for-profit, the Waqf can be used in that perspective. But the situation of Waqf and the sadaqah, because it's low level of trust of the organization who collect and distribute, and that is being rampant in the Muslim world and the United States. For example, only 0.5% or $1.9 billion in 2004 of the GDP of Turkey goes to giving. People distrustful in general and prefer to give charity directly to beneficiaries instead of to organization. So individual giving is fine, but if you can collect it collectively, you can do very good things. But unfortunately, because of low level of trust, this is not getting into traction. So what is a cash Waqf? So it's basically modus operandi. You start with an entity, organization structure. You collect money. People give money to this structure, and that money is being invested in different activities. The profit is being generated, and the generated profit is being distributed for different charitable purposes. So you never touch your capital. Capital remains intact. That is the beauty of Waqf. It is self-perpetuating. It never really gets out of fashion. So there are different types of Waqf. I have written a couple of books with the Waqf tradition in different parts of the world. If you go to the Middle East, North Africa, at one time, 1/3 of their arable land was Waqf properties. But when the colonialists, it was colonialized, the Muslim world, they have destroyed the institution of Waqf in the Middle East, North Africa, in India, and that's the way our faith, our tradition has been compromised, has been weakened. Now, Islamic Development Bank has a Waqf institution, and I would advise at one time, the House of Hikmah can approach them. Their model is that you have to have a land under a trust, and the Islamic Development Bank will come in, invest into this project, and you have to pay Islamic Bank their investment, and whatever additional return you have, you can spend on your charitable activities. For example, House of Hikmah. So there are different types of Waqf model. I talk in my book. You have the Waqf share scheme, you have the compulsory cash Waqf, you have the mobile Waqf, you have the corporate Waqf scheme. So I just want to focus on just a couple of things for the sake of time. So let's talk about cash Waqf deposit scheme. That is being popularized in Bangladesh. So basically, the Islamic Bank creates a separate account. Anybody can deposit money. Those can take, 10% or $100 or 100 taka per month and put this into cash Waqf. So Islamic Bank collects those deposits and invests this money, and the return is being spent on different charitable activities. Either determined by the giver, the person who puts the money into the bank, or the Islamic Bank has its own policy of distributing this money. There is another one, education fund in Bahrain. the Central Bank of Bahrain has created a Waqf fund, and that Waqf money is being used to pay tuition and educational expenses of the people who go to an institution called Bahrain Islamic Finance Institute. It's called BIBF. So that tradition is also being, is still running. So these are the different types of model. We can copycat any of this model that suits for the House of Wisdom, this foundation, these activities, to promote, to support its activities. I also offered in our paper that we could have a world Waqf model. It can be initiated by the Islamic Development Bank or OIC. So different countries will pledge some of their income earning assets to this Waqf fund, and this income earning assets money will go to a cash Waqf fund, and that cash Waqf fund will be invested in different activities, and money will be reinvested into different type of charitable activities. So there are different organizations, by the way, for the sake of the public, there are different Islamic support organizations that exist already. We have called AOFI. It's called Accounting Auditing Organization Islamic Financial Institution, based in Bahrain. So it has created different types of guidelines, operational models, modus operandi to run and have the Islamic finance industry. Now it is accounting roles, it has governance, ethics, and auditing. It has different organizational structure. Actually, this morning in the brainstorming session, I was talking about you need to have a blueprint if you want to move forward, take this organization forward. So it has an education board. The education board, they have a representation from all over the world. I sit on this education board. Last 5 minutes I want to focus on the ill of Muslim or decline of Muslim mind. There are 10 values. Institutional values are important: liberty, critical thinking, justice, the role of law, equality, involved culture, accountability, competence, punctuality, and plurality. And these values existed. These are embedded in the Quran and Sunnah. What happened? The West has stolen all these values, implemented this in their culture, and they are leading the world. So we need to have this expansion of our mind. There are 3 ways the value-based organization can be developed. We have to have a good educational organization. We have been talking about different madrasas, different Islamic financial institutions, centers, and so on. In this country, you have to go more than this. That generates critical thinking, liberty, competency, accountability, participatory culture. We need to have a political and legal organization. We live in this country, so you have to live under the political organization or system that prevails in this country. We need to create our own economic organization using whatever the market mechanism is there, so that we do have the economic muscle as well. Now, there was a, westernization, modernization, that debate exists in the Islamic political economic discourse. Yes, there is sharing or collecting values and following. There is nothing wrong. If it is good, it does not contradict the Sharia. Now, but westernization can happen in 2 ways. You adopt the Western popular culture, all the bad things, Western movies, dress, and so on, Western lifestyles, or you can westernize by adopting Western work ethics. In America, you work, you love this work ethics. Whatever country you come from, you think that it's better. There's nothing wrong to accept it. Western business ethics and Western governance ethics. So now the question is, what you want to like to be. There are 3 pictures. You can be happy animal, you can be unhappy human, or you can be happy human. How you can be? How to westernize? Do you want to take the Western popular culture and bad things and sinking values from them, and you become a nothing? Or you can uplift your values. How you can uplift your values? If we ignore, because we live in this country, the West completely, we will be unhappy human. Do you want to be unhappy human? No. If we imitate the West for sinking values, we'll be happy animal. we are happy. We are having fun, live for today, forget about others. We don't care. Or we can imitate the West for uplifting values. What are those uplifting values? Institutional building, good ethics, 10 values, and we can be uplifting values, and that will generate us happy human. So what I'm saying, it is not an Islamic country completely. We are living in the West, in the United States. We have to live within their the institutional framework and try to promote our values and let them, maybe one day, even the system will change, but you have to show through our actions and activities. But the question is, how to transform this? How to have the Muslim world to be efficient as the West? It is difficult, but we need to change in the formal and informal institutions. There are two key factors that explain the difficulty. There's a path dependence. What do you mean by this? Past choices affect future choices. So if you are colonialized, they have changed our mind, that continues. We need to change the thought process, our mind frame. And in order to do this, you have to have internalized informal system. Start from the bottom, start from the core, change starts from the informal institutions and ends at the formal institution. So House of Hikmah, you start from here, informal institution, let it grow big, and finally you attack the formal institutions. As the informal norms and enforcement characteristics are different, it is hardly possible for a poor country to mimic the success of developed countries. Transformative socio-economic change shall begin at the informal institution level first, then to formal institutions. Once we incorporate 10 institutional values everywhere, we can easily create necessary formal institutions and organizations to bring real socio-economic transformation. So these 10 institutional values are important. These are embedded in Islam. It exists in the golden ages of Muslim world. If the West wants to catch up, the West, we must need to revisit these 10 institutional values. We have to compare where you stand compared to the West right now, and you have to go back to our original value proposition. Inshallah, then we'll become a good ummah and also will be a good role model for the rest of the humanity. So that is all. Thank you very much.